Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. I'm going to say it again. We have a free agent tracker for every team on ESPN.com. I, of course, have one for the Commanders. So every signing, I'm going to have my little analysis on there about what it means and how I see it fitting. What's the risk involved? Typically, there isn't much risk, but sometimes there is. Anyways, that's up on ESPN.com. So go up there and give that a listen, give it a read. You can go to the Commanders home team page and it'll be on there. And so you can sign up and get those notifications sent to your phone. So do that for me as well. Also, if you want to become a club member, go to the Ampire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on that, go from there. I'm going to be doing another private Zoom for the gold members next week. And for you regular members, I will be doing one probably the week after that. So just stay tuned for all that news. Anyways, there you go. So I have five things I think today, and just a couple of reminders. Free agency is going to continue, so I'm going to keep doing stuff as long as news warrants or as long as there's stuff to talk about. And then we will be having more press conferences soon with Deebo Samuel, soon with Laramie Tunsil, etc. So just stay tuned for all that. Anyways, today my five things I think, and let's get to it because there are five things, and it's been a long day. So let's go. Anyways, I think the Commanders have a price, and they're pretty much sticking to it. And I think that's why DeMarcus Lawrence isn't here. I think that's why Joey Bosa isn't here. They were in play for both those defensive edge rushers. I think with Lawrence, there was certainly a price that he was sticking to, and there was one that these guys were sticking to. Now, I was told like that came down to the wire for where Lawrence was going to go. So, but I just I don't know in the end what it was all about, but I do know that this team is pretty much sticking close pretty much to what not a budget, but more so a price point where you feel like that's the worth it for that. For Bosa, he's a guy who's been often injured and he's going to get, I think, up to 12.5 million, something from Buffalo. Not a bad deal, but you consider the injuries and you have to wonder like you need to get that full return on your investment for sure. Anyways, but I think that, you see that they are sticking to that. Now, could that be troublesome at times? Well, if you keep losing guys, then yes, it can be because if that's a factor and if it prevents you from taking the next step. But I also like that they're not just going to throw money and just that, we saw Snyder end up having a budget, but I think it was different because I don't think you can afford this stuff sometimes. But I think these guys are trying to be protective of the cap. We'll see if it works. That's why with some of these guys who are in their 30s, you're getting just 1 year deals. Like DeMarcus Lawrence getting a 3 year deal, good for him. I don't know that I would have done that at that age. I think he's still a good player. Obviously, this team knows him because Dan Quinn coached him. But anyways, so there you go. So I think that's one thing. Also, I know DJ Reed, the corner, said that he was had, that came down to him for Detroit and Washington. I would just say that this team, I think, was confused by why Reed said that because I'm not sure that in their mind that was the case. I would just say like they were confused by that statement from Reed. So, take that for what it's worth. So I'm not so sure that they were in on him the way he said, but that's what he said, and that's what he said it came down to. But I will just say these guys were, I think, a little bit confused by that statement. So, um, I and I have heard, well, I'll say this too. Like I've heard from some agents who their guy end up not coming here or not being here or whatever, who feel like they like what Peters is doing, Adam Peters is doing here. So even though maybe their guy didn't end up in Washington this year, that they're like they're in good hands. So just so you know, like that's still the reputation outside here. And I know it's funny because before free agency, you heard a lot about like guys want to play here, and I do believe that. I strongly believe that. That doesn't mean all those guys who want to play here are the ones that they're trying to get or who ended up being free in the first place, because I don't know who those guys were. It's just that that's what you heard. And I'd hear from people in the league and from agents too. Like Washington was in a unique situation for the first time in a long time, but because they had so many spots to fill with their own guys or with just need to fill out that roster, I think there's a different approach than maybe, you weren't going to go out and get everybody, and they never were planning to go out and just spend like crazy. That was never the stated goal. And I will say this, they didn't do that last year either. And I know some people listening to this who are panicking this year, panicked last year. And I reminded people in October, like, this is why you have to remember in the offseason, don't just get swayed by X, Y, and Z in free agency. And I'm going to say it again, that they seem to work out okay. And one of the reasons is because they drafted Jaden Daniels. Well, guess who is still here? Jaden Daniels. He'll probably get a little bit better as well. Anyways, all my only point in saying that is don't overreact to the early phases of free agency. But I will, for those of you who say like the defense has to get better, I do agree with that. Anyways, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. So anyway, but I do think it's good to be, I think it's good to be disciplined with with setting, not just setting a budget, but setting a guideline for how much you want to spend for a certain player, and then sticking close to that just because can you get more value? Now, again, if you lose a lot of guys, then you have to adjust maybe your thought process going into it, but we don't know yet if it's going to work or not. So let's see how it plays out. And sometimes it may take the whole season to see. I mean, if Joey Bosa goes out and has a gangbuster season, maybe they could have paid a little bit more. Same for DeMarcus Lawrence. We'll see. Anyways, and these guys haven't filled that spot yet either. So there are a couple guys out there. Azeez Ojulari is still out there. At one point, they had expressed interest in him. I don't know to the level that it was. I don't know. I don't even think there was an offer. So don't go crazy on that. The point is it sounds like they at least had a discussion with his side. And then, Von Miller's still out there. I don't know about that one. Haven't heard anything yet. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, number two, I do think these defensive moves are all about adding flexibility and variety to what they can do up front. There's versatility for sure. It gives Washington a lot of options. You got Dietrich Wise. They signed Eddie Goldman, and then they also signed Jacob Martin on what's tonight, Thursday night. All those moves, I think, are giving them some added level of versatility, and especially with the kind of fronts you can use. If you want to go to a four-man front, you obviously have, which is what has been their base. They obviously can do that because they have the two tackles. They have enough ends. You still need a pass rushing end. We know that, but you do have the ability to play that way. If you also want to go to a three-man front, you have that ability as well. You can put Goldman over the nose. You got Payne as an end. You could put Dietrich Wise as an end. You could put Johnny Newton perhaps as an end in that kind of a set, or use it, kind of mix and match that way. But you also have Jacob Martin, who has played as both a 3-4 outside linebacker and a 4-3 defensive end. Now, I'm not sitting there saying they're going to go to some sort of a 3-4 look, but I do think you can start to add more variety to what you do to perhaps help match up better against various teams and what they do on the ground, especially because I do think like Wise, when I watched Dietrich Wise, kind of like what I saw from him. And one of the games I watched him was against San Francisco and Trent Williams. And we know how good Trent is. And, there were a handful of plays that I felt like he did a nice job against him. And he's not a great pass rusher. He's not very fluid, but he can be a 4-5 sack guy. He has good length. He's just not a fluid pass rusher, but he does play with power. And even though he's 6'5", he can play with some good balance and leverage. And I think that could help a guy like Javon Kinlaw if he has to play on the edge at all, like perhaps is the case. But, I like that, in the San Francisco game, Wise had a sack, but he got it because he stayed after the play. It wasn't like he was going against Trent Williams. It wasn't like he just beat Trent, but I will say he stayed with the play and Trent Williams did not. That's why he ends up with the sack. And, Purdy kind of danced around. He goes and gets him, and there you go. But I liked how Wise handled the run in that game. In fact, there was one, I'm going to put this up for you if you're watching on YouTube, just a little clip. Listen, it wasn't like he got Trent Williams all the time. Trent Williams, obviously, we know how good he is. But there were a couple plays. There was one on the edge where he was able to get into Trent, kind of stand him up a little bit, set a good edge, forces the back, to cut up because he got depth on his set, and he has forced the back to cut up. And then there's some defenders coming inside. Wise peels off inside, helps tackle the ball carrier. It's a 1 yard gain. So just a really good play by him, but it starts with the power against Williams. Now, I will say, a couple plays later, Williams turns him inside, creates a lane, and the Niners get a touchdown because Trent Williams is an all-pro offensive tackle, Hall of Famer. We know that. But my point is, it wasn't like, and I will say this, in watching the game, it's not like he dominated Wise on the ground. He did not. I thought he did a good, obviously Williams is very good. There are a couple other times that I thought Williams played it really well. So I think he gives you somebody else who can play the run and do a nice job with it. But it also, again, adds to the versatility up front. And when you look at what the kind of pieces they're compiling, they are able to play some different roles. Again, Goldman can play a different role. And I think with Martin, he can play a different role as well. If you want to be a 3-4-3 end where he's gotten better, fine. If you want to, but he has played some 3-4 outside linebacker. So if you want to throw a different look, maybe a 3-3-5 where you have, three down linemen, three linebackers, five defensive backs. It's kind of popular by some college coaches, but you could do something like that as well. And so just mixing and matching and giving you different options. If you're not going to have the studs to do it, if you can tap into your creativity as a coach, and that's something I think one of the things that Quinn has done very well is tap into what does a guy do well. And I wrote a big story about him during the season, and a lot of it was about his quest to find different ways to coach people, how to reach people, how to develop players. Like he went to talk to basketball NBA coaches or college coaches, male and female, about their practices, how they develop players to become positionless, right? And just the whole process of that. Well, he applied that to football. And so now you have guys that can, but I think it's also about looking for ways to do things a little bit different, not just sticking with one sort of system, but evolving it and getting players who can do different things. If you have too many guys who are mismatched parts, it doesn't work. But Goldman can play in a 4-man front. And Martin can play in either a 3 or 4-man front. So I think you have guys who can do both, but it also gives you the ability to flex out what you can do. I guarantee you that's part of the thought process behind getting some of these guys in here, for sure. And like I said, what I saw from Wise, I liked what I saw from him. I think he'll fit with what they want to do. And I think he definitely fits with what they want, who they are, just in general. So, anyways, there you go. I think that's a big thing to consider with that defensive front. And it doesn't mean I'm not trying to sell you a bill of goods here. My job isn't to sell you on what it can be, but what I like to do is try to understand the thought process behind some of the signings, some of the moves, because if you can understand it, then it's a little bit easier to see. And it's not just as simple as, oh, this guy stunk here last year, so therefore he's going to stink here this year. I don't know. You have to know what the plan is. It's also like different situations. As someone else pointed out, like, yes, Javon Kinlaw struggled with the Jets last year. You know who else struggled? Pretty much all the Jets, because they stunk and their defense wasn't very good. And I'll tell you, you thought going into the year that was going to be a top defense. Sauce Gardner had a tough year. Would you take Sauce Gardner? And I'm not saying Javon Kinlaw is going to be some all-star because of that, because I saw a lot of inconsistencies in his game also in San Francisco. But part of the reason he signed a lower deal is because he was coming off an injury from San Francisco. And so, don't get caught up in some of that. Well, you can if you want to, because again, you can watch film too. And I'm not trying to sell you a bill of goods on it. I'm just saying, like, if you look at the deal, say, why would they do this? So maybe it's because of this. That's how I try to approach it, more from a logic base and not just overreacting to seeing like, oh my God, he was this, so boom. Sometimes it could be that simple, but I don't think in this case that it necessarily is, because too many guys know him, and I think they definitely have a plan, but I think that plan involves, with this front, these moves suggest to me just trying to broaden what they do with that defensive front, for sure. So, I had one other thing to tell you about that, and now I forgot. So I'm just going to go on to number 3, and that's I think it's too bad that Olamide Zaccheaus is gone. He ended up signing with the Chicago Bears, and it's too bad because I think he epitomized a Dan Quinn type player and the mentality. And I'll tell you, like, they loved him, and I know some people there are very disappointed that he's gone, not just because they felt like he contributed for them, but because he felt like he's just a good dude. Um, I will say this, and I think, it was his effort, it was his attitude, it was his approach. And I've talked about this, but that Bengals game to me was very telling. He was a guy that he barely played in that game. It's a third game of the year. First two games he plays a lot. Third game he does not. But yet he's one of the first guys off the bench congratulating guys that come out the field after a touchdown. Big play. He was really into it. That takes a professional approach, and that's who he was. He always, when he was needed, he came through. There were times it was the effort from coming from the backside of the field and running downfield and recovering a fumble where not many guys would have made the effort he did to just stay in the play on the play where he was on the other side. There was no need for him to do it other than a desire to make sure nothing happened. And if it did, that you were there and it did happen and he was there and it benefited them. So like that's the kind of stuff he did. He was tough. Now, I will say, I would say Thursday morning, I'm going to almost guarantee that both he and Washington felt like he would stay a Commander because that was the desire by both. I think what changed things is that they re-signed Noah Brown, which was not a surprise, and they also re-signed KJ Osborne. So I think if you're Zaccheaus, now you're wondering what is going to happen to me, not just you make the roster or not, but then your role when you do make the roster. Because when you look at it, obviously their number one receiver, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel's going to play, and I do think Noah Brown. I'll get to him in a minute. So, but I think he'll obviously be one of your top three receivers, and then it's like after that, where's Luke McCaffrey fit in, and then also KJ Osborne. Now, I know some people were like, why would they re-sign him? Well, they signed the guy and they claimed the guy off waivers in December. It's kind of hard to come into a system like, yes, the route tree is what it is. You still got to learn the plays. You still got to, there's still so much to go. There's so many other things to do. And I thought maybe he'd play a little bit more. I think, but I would like to see him with a full camp and then see what happens there because I think he can be okay. Like in Minnesota for 3 years prior to last year, he did a good job. He was like, in that 40 to 50 catch range as a possession type receiver. He can give them that. So I think he can still be productive, but I think so that's why I say if you're Zaccheaus and you see this and you say like, wait a minute, where am I going to, how do I fit in? Will I be able to get that? And if you're only getting a 1 year deal as a receiver, you need to be able to put up numbers so you can get a better deal the next year. And so I think that's why he ended up in Chicago. But again, I think it's a disappointing loss for people here. And I think it's probably a little bit disappointing for Zaccheaus because I think he would like to have stayed here. Um, I mean, he helped. And again, he was a Dan Quinn type guy, and now he's out the door. So, but I do believe that that's the reasoning for it. And I know, like I said, I feel pretty safe in saying that as this morning, it looked like it certainly the desire was to stay here. So just say that. But they didn't get it done. And again, but I don't think that it's a death sentence for them that they don't have Zaccheaus. But I do think it's, like I said, it's disappointing because I thought he's a good guy. And he also was just a Dan Quinn type player. So, anyways, number four, I don't think you should sleep on Noah Brown, and maybe you're not. But I think a couple of things, he's coming off that kidney injury. He told me at the end of the year that he was good and that he was fine. He was able to run and all that. But I don't think that's an issue at all, which is good for him because that was that's a tough injury. But he's a physical player. He was having his best year at 35 catches, was eight in 11 games, was eight shy of his career best. And consider this. They claimed him right before the start of the season. So everything I just said about KJ Osborne, I think you can then look at Noah Brown and say, like, this dude came in right away and contributed. But I also think he has a different skill set. Just you can get the ball to him down the field, and they had more of a need for that kind of guy for sure. And so I just think that was an impressive season that he had given when he got here. So now you can get him all off season, training camp, and get him ready to go. The only thing you have to hope for him is that you want for him is can stay healthy because that's been the number one issue throughout his career. Can he do that? He does play physical. He does make those contested catches and he lays himself out for stuff. And that's how you can end up hurting yourself. But you can't blame him for that, but that is a result. But he does play that way. I mean, shoot, there are times where he's leading guys through the hole as a pulling receiver. And you can go back and do that. And it's funny because De'Ami Brown got paid this offseason, and part of the reason he got paid is for two people, Jaden Daniels and Noah Brown. Because if Noah Brown doesn't get hurt, I don't think De'Ami Brown is playing those kind of minutes. Good for De'Ami. I think he earned it, and it's great to see. But I do think the point is like Noah Brown was doing a good job before then. He makes big plays, and I would still try to get some. I still want someone else behind him, whether it's KJ Osborne if he comes through, or if you can find another young receiver to do that, or if McCaffrey can develop. That's what they need for sure because it's not a bad group. But a key to this will be obviously Deebo Samuel, what he can do, and I do think that he'll be in a good situation with Jaden Daniels and his ability to lead guys into yards after the catch. Something I didn't always see when Purdy was throwing to him. Not that Purdy's a pretty accurate passer, but I think at times I saw it where it's like, oh, there were just lost yards or bad throw, whatever. And I think he'll be in a better spot here with that. But Noah Brown gives him another big play guy down the sidelines, and that's a good move for sure. So, and the funny thing is when you look at these receivers, and I was talking about this with someone else, like look at all these receivers who had their best season last year. Was Terry McLaurin had his best season, Noah Brown on his way to his best season, De'Ami Brown best season, Olamide Zaccheaus best season. What's the common denominator here, folks? So if you can continue to develop guys and get more talent around that on that offense, I think you'll see more big plays because of Jaden Daniels. So, I just think it's funny. And Zach Ertz had a terrific year. Not his best year, but his most productive touchdown year in about 5 years, something like that. One off his career high, I think it was. So like there's like I said, there's a common denominator and it's the guy throwing the ball. So you improve that line, you get Deebo in here, who's better than what they had in those roles. You get Noah Brown healthy, but in a full off season. Now you maybe can make it a more explosive offense. Get me a running back there to go with these guys. And I think you're in good shape there on offense for sure. And at least you can feel really good about one side of the ball going into the season. All right, number 5, let's go. I think what you see from this place when we talk to Marcus Mariota and Will Harris today is just that this place has really turned around. And I think it's evident in the comments you hear from players when we talk to them on the Zoom. Now, when guys are re-signing or signing here, a lot of times it's going to come down to money. We know that. However, we know Zach Ertz wanted to be here. I know Marcus Mariota wanted to stay here if he didn't find something better, right? And Will Harris couldn't have been more excited when you talk to him. Again, like there's always going to be that, but some teams get you a little bit more excited than others. And it's funny because in the past, guys would always say things about coming here, and sometimes like I'm not sure if they really mean that because you before they were going to a place where they've won 7 games, 8 games, 9 games, 6 games. They're coming off a 12-win season here, and this is where I'll go back to a couple of things with Will Harris. One, I'm going to go because again we talked to him on the Zoom, so couple of things that he said. One thing I think that you'll enjoy is listening to him talk about his play style. He loves playing physical. He likes bringing the energy, and as he said, he quote likes to hunt. So I think you'll see that. You see that attitude on film when he played Washington. I saw that on film. He saw him scrapping, not getting in a fight, but just the way he scrapped against the John Bates, the way he came up and tackled Brian Robinson, etc. Like he likes to lace. He likes to pop. So I think that's a good thing. You'll enjoy that. Is he as good as Jeremy Chin? Can't say that. I think we got to wait and see. Is it a major downgrade? No, I don't think at all. Is Chin better? I think he was better last year. Got a 3-year deal because of it. Got more money because of it. But I don't think that's like this big downgrade. And I do think that Harris fits with who they want to be. So I don't want to paint it in a certain way. I just think you'll enjoy Will Harris's mindset. But the other thing is too, and this is one of the things that one of the things he talked about was how much he noticed the closeness of this group and how he could hear guys, the way they communicated on the field, the way they reacted to one another on the sidelines, the way just the way they embraced what they had here. So this is what Will Harris had to say about what he saw from the Commanders last year and why he's excited to be here.
Earlier in your career? 100%, 100%. I mean, it's that's one of those things that you kind of can't fake. You can't fake juice, you can't fake enthusiasm, and you can't fake love. And so you see all of those things when you look at this team, and that's evident. Whether you're playing against them or you're seeing them on TV. that's evident in the way that we do things here. And that was super attractive to me. And you can just tell. You can just tell. By especially someone, if you're around the game, and you're able to tell. By the way that guys play, by the way that guys carry themselves around their teammates, by the way they by the way they hustle, and by the way they react to each other on the sidelines. It's clear, and it's as evident as ever here. So I'm super excited.
As for Marcus Mariota, one of the things that, again, I told you, like one of the things that he was looking for was a place to start. Could he get a chance to start? He wanted to make sure, or at least investigate to see, did that place exist? Well, the answer was no. And short of that, I thought he would be back here because he really, really liked it here. He knows the impact he had on Jaden Daniels, but he also liked being a part of this place. And I think, again, it's funny to hear what the players say because it really represents how much this place has changed in just 1 year. And, I know, again, I go back to the free agency stuff, how guys, oh, all these guys want to play here. And I still believe a lot of guys would had they either maybe made a more aggressive offer or if they had even pursued them. Because not they're just because a guy wants to play here doesn't mean that they want him to play here, right? So, but I do think that the guys who know it, like it, and wanted to be back here. What that means, I don't know. You still need to have Jaden Daniels continue to get better. You still got to find another pass rusher, all that good stuff. So I'm not going to minimize any of that to just say like, oh, it's all great here because they all like being here. But I do think that matters because it's very, very different. And maybe after having covered this for so long, I'm still getting used to guys feeling that way about this place because it hasn't been that case for too long, or it hadn't been that case that way in a long, long time. Anyways, but Marcus, one of the things again, and the only other thing I thought that could have maybe pulled him away from here is if he had a chance to play closer to home, because again, I've told you he's got his family in Oregon. Just who would blame him? Who you couldn't blame him for that. But I don't know where Seattle would have been a natural one, but they don't have a need for. They have Sam Darnold, they have Sam Howell, so there was no need for him. But as Mariota said, the grass is not always greener. He loves the QB room here. He loves being around Jaden Daniels. Those two have a very good relationship. And I told you, shoot, goes back to last spring. It was pretty quick where they hit it off. And I think that makes a big difference. For sure. Listen, Mariota not only helped Jaden, he helped this team by going in the way he played against Carolina, the way he played against Dallas. I mean, he was terrific in both those games. And I don't think it was a fluke. And it's funny because sometimes you just get in the right spot for you. And I wondered how those games might play out for other teams. Maybe if he had played in a couple more games and had maybe a little bit more of a sample size, that other teams would have been interested in him as a starter. I would say this, you should be glad that they didn't because that's why he's back. And it's funny because when they signed him a year ago, I don't think a lot of us thought it was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a great signing. I don't think a lot of people thought that, and I wasn't sold on it either. So, but it turns out not only very wrong because his style of play matches, which you knew the style of play kind of would match what Kingsbury wanted to do. That's matches Mariota. But I also wonder just, what did he have left and what kind of mentor he was? You had heard different things, certainly from his Atlanta days. Turns out all that stuff that you heard from Atlanta, I would say was either not accurate or really wasn't the person or player that we got to see this year by any means. And I would say, I don't think it's an act what we saw from Mariota. I think he's just, to be honest, he's a really good guy. And I think he's more importantly, is a really good pro. Anyways, this is why he told me or told us on the conference call that he wanted to return to Washington. Kind of led to that.
I think it was a culmination of the entire season. And when I took a step back and thought about it and reflected, it was so important for me to be a part of this and to just enjoy my journey. I think there's been so many times in my career, there's been a lot of ups, there's been a lot of downs, and I just wanted to just enjoy coming into work. And what DQ has built here is probably the best environment that I've ever been a part of. And for me, that's hard to leave.
Finally, the Commanders capped Thursday night. Well, they had a couple moves, but one was Martin. The other one was re-signing linebacker Nick Bellore. Not a surprise there. Again, key special teamer, smart move, and I think that was a necessary one to keep him around. Jeremy Reeves, I remember telling me just how the conversations he and Ballore would have during games were almost like, I guess if you'd say a PhD for special teamers, that's what it was. And I think Reeves got a huge kick out of having Ballore around because he could talk at a different level on the field, on the sidelines, and I just think they kind of both geeked out about that. I think that stuff is kind of cool. Anyways, that's it for me, folks. I'll be back this weekend. I don't know if it's Saturday or Sunday, but I'll be back this weekend with another episode. Again, we're going to be talking to some more of the players. I think Debo, I think Tunsil on, those. I think Tunsil's on Saturday. So, anyways, I'll be back, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in as always.